The sound of hooves echoed across the dry land like a warning. Rowan Pierce looked up from the broken fence he was trying to fix when he saw Mason Cree riding into the yard. Mason was a man known for selling anything that could breathe or bleed. His eyes were cold, empty of mercy, and the grin on his face never meant anything good. When he spoke, his words made Rowan pause, thinking he must have heard wrong. 3 days, Pierce. Just keep this beast for me. $300. Rowan felt the weight of the money before he even touched it. $300 could save his ranch. It could keep him alive through winter. He nodded without asking a question. Not until Mason swung his boot and kicked the iron cage sitting in the middle of the yard. The tarp flew off. Rowan's breath stopped. Inside the cage, a massive Apache woman. She was suspended upside down by her ankles from an iron beam. Her wrists were tied behind her back. Her long black hair brushed the dirt beneath her head. Blood had rushed into her face, turning her lips dark and swollen. Her body was covered in dust and dried blood, her muscles thick and powerful even in pain. But it was her eyes that froze him. They were wide open, deep, dark. Burning with pride, Mason laughed. Denver Circus pays good money for something like her. An Apache this big is rare. I am holding her till they come. Unless you want to enjoy her first. Rowan's fists clenched. The money in his coat pocket suddenly felt heavy, like it was tied. To his soul, he said nothing. Mason smirked, turned his horse, and rode away, leaving Rowan alone with the cage and the wind whistling through broken wood. Rowan looked into her upside-down eyes. In them, he saw himself, small, weak, afraid. And what? It made him sick. Morning came slow and harsh. Sunlight spilled across the dirt, lighting every crack in the iron bars. The woman still hung there, her body swaying slightly with the breeze. Blood had been rushing to her head for too long. Her face was swollen and dark, but her eyes still burned with fire. Rowan sat nearby with his gun across his lap, trying to look cold, like Mason told him to. But every time he glanced at her, something inside him shook. A person hung like this should scream or beg. She did neither. She watched him calmly, like a warrior standing on a battlefield. By late morning, Rowan could not stay silent. Can you hear me? She blinked once and nodded. Rowan swallowed and held a cup of water to her lips. I am not trying to hurt you. I am just doing what Mason pays me for. She gave a faint smile. White man always says that her voice was deep and steady. Even upside down. I am not like them, Rowan said quickly, though he did not believe his own words. Not yet, she replied. The words hit him harder than a slap. Rowan began pacing. His chest felt tight. She spoke again, slowly, each word costing her strength. I protected Apache children. White men hunted them. I used a knife. They caught me, beat me, locked me in cage-like animal. Rowan stopped moving. The story was simple and heavy. A woman who protected children was being sold for entertainment. How much is the circus paying? He asked. More than the price of your soul. Rowan said nothing. The wind moved through the yard, carrying the sound of chains. He knew then that if Mason returned on time, she would never see the sky again. Night fell, thick and dark. No stars showed above. The ranch felt like it was holding its breath. Rowan lit an oil lamp and placed it near the cage. The yellow light showed her trembling body, not from fear, but from pain. Her breathing was rough and uneven. I am going to lower you a little, Rowan whispered. She closed her eyes and nodded. He carefully eased the rope. She let out a low cry, but did not scream. Her jaw tightened as she endured it. I have survived worse, she said. Rowan sat near her, listening to her breathing. Each breath hurt him. He remembered the war, the bodies, the fear. The way he ran and lived with shame. "Do you think I am like Mason?" he asked. She looked at him in the dark. "I do not know, but I see you are afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of yourself." The words cut deep. The wind picked up. Rowan draped his coat over the cage to block the cold. "Why do you not scream or beg?" he asked. "Because screaming saves no one. Looking them in the eyes makes them weaker." He pressed water to her lips again. She drank slowly. "If you die in this cage," Rowan said quietly, "it means I killed you." She looked at him and spoke softly. "Then do not let me die." That night, Rowan made his choice. Though he had not yet acted, the second night came quiet and heavy. Rowan wrapped cloth around her swollen ankles. Her body shook, but her eyes stayed strong. "You will be all right," he whispered. "No one can hang my soul upside down." She replied. Then came the sound that made Rowan's blood turn cold. Hooves. Early. Mason. Cree's laughter cut through the dark. He stumbled into the yard, drunk and cruel. He moved toward the cage, reaching out. Rowan stepped in front of him. "Do not touch her." Mason laughed and shoved him. Rowan did not move. "Move. Pierce." Rowan drew his gun. "Put the key down. Leave." Mason's. Men reached for their weapons. The air went still. Inside the cage, the woman let out a long breath, not of pain, but relief. "You are dead." "Pierce," Mason growled. "Maybe," Rowan said, "but not tonight." Mason cursed and finally backed away, riding off into the dark with his men, shouting threats that echoed across the land. Rowan stood until the sound faded. Then he turned back to the cage. Her eyes met his. "I am still alive," she whispered. "Not sure yet," Rowan replied, "but no one touches you again." He reached for the key. The key shook in Rowan Pierce's hand as he slid it into the iron lock. The metal was cold, but it burned his skin all the same. When the lock clicked open, the sound felt louder than a gunshot. Rowan held his breath and pulled the cage door wide. He stepped inside and reached up to the rope. Tala's body trembled as he began to lower her. When her feet touched the ground, her legs buckled. Blood rushed back through her body, making her gasp like someone pulled from deep water. Rowan caught her shoulders before she fell. "Easy now," he whispered. "I can stand," Tala said, though her voice shook. "Not tonight," Rohan replied. He helped her sit against the wooden wall of the barn. Her chest rose and fell hard. Her face was swollen and bruised, but her eyes were still clear, still proud. Rowan handed her water. She drank in slow, careful sips, like each swallow mattered. "Thank you," she said quietly. Rowan nodded, not trusting his voice. He stood and brought out his best horse. It was the only good thing he had left. He placed the reins in her hands and then pressed his old revolver into her palm. "You will need this more than I will," he said. Tala looked at the gun, then at him. "They will come for you, I know," Rowan said. "But I cannot live with myself if I let you stay." She mounted the horse slowly. Before she rode away, she leaned down and placed her large hand over Rowan's heart. "Tomorrow," she said, "you might die. At least tonight," Rowan answered. "I did what was right." She nodded once and rode into the dark, disappearing into the mountains. Like a shadow carried by wind, Rowan stood alone in the yard, the cage empty behind him. The ranch felt different now, quieter, like something had been broken open. Dawn had not yet touched the sky when Rowan heard hooves again. Slow, steady, angry. He knew the sound at once. Mason Cree was back. This time, he was sober. Rowan did not. Wait. He saddled his remaining horse and rode hard toward the narrow canyon behind the ranch. If Mason caught him in the open yard, he would die there. The canyon was tight with high rock walls and sharp turns. It was the only place Rowan might stand a chance. He reached the canyon as the sky began to gray. Dust hung in the air. Then Mason appeared at the mouth of the canyon with his 2 men beside him. "Pierce," Mason shouted. "You cost me $1,000, Rowan." Turned and raised his gun. "Turn back. I do not want to kill anyone." Mason laughed and raised his hand. His men split to the sides, climbing the rocks. The first shot cracked through the air. Rowan dove behind a boulder as dirt exploded around him. He fired back. 1 man screamed and fell from his horse. The second shot sent another rider crashing into the rocks. The canyon echoed with chaos. Only Mason remained. "You shot my men," Mason growled. "They shot first," Rowan answered, breathless. Mason lifted his gun and aimed. Rowan felt his revolver click, empty in his hand. No bullets left, no cover left. He stood up straight. In that moment, Rowan thought of Tala, hanging upside down, unbroken. He thought of her hand on his chest. He thought of how running away would turn him into something worse than Mason. Mason pulled the trigger. A gunshot rang out, but it did not come from Mason. Federal Marshal. "Drop your weapon." Torches flared to life. Horses surged forward. Federal. Marshals surrounded the canyon. Rifles aimed. Mason froze. Marshal Deacon Hale rode forward, his badge catching the firelight. Mason tried to speak, but no words came. "Trafficking native people," Hale said calmly. "That ends tonight." Mason shouted and cursed as his hands were bound. Rowan leaned against the rock, his legs shaking with relief. "Are you Pierce?" Hale asked. Rowan nodded. "You did not call us," Hale said, "but you chose right. You are free." The marshals lead Mason away. The canyon grew quiet again. Rowan stood alone as the sun finally rose. But his life was already changed. The canyon slowly emptied as the federal marshals rode away with Mason Cree and his men. The sound of hooves faded into the distance, leaving only the wind moving through stone and dust. Rowan Pierce stayed where he was for a long moment, leaning against the cold rock, breathing like a man who had just been pulled back from the edge of death. Marshal Deacon Hale turned his horse and looked at Rowan one last time. "Not everyone gets a chance to change their life," he said. "Tonight, you did." Then the marshal rode off, and silence settled over the canyon. When Rowan finally returned to the ranch, dawn was just breaking. Pale light spilled over the land, showing the damage left behind. Footprints crossed the yard in every direction. The iron cage stood open and empty, shadows stretching across the dirt like a memory that refused to leave. Rowan stepped into the barn. The place smelled of dust and oil and fear. He took off his gun belt and threw it against the wall. It hit the wood with a sharp sound. That gun had followed him through war and shame. Now it felt like something from another life. He washed the blood from his hands in the basin. The water was cold, biting at his skin. $300 gone. His best horse gone. His quiet life shattered. No one in the West praised a man for saving an Apache woman. There would be whispers. Trouble may be worse. And yet his chest felt lighter. Rowan walked outside as the sun rose higher. The mountains glowed faintly in the distance. Hoofprints cut through the dirt, leading toward those cliffs. Tala's path. He stood there for a long time, imagining her riding free, her body still aching, but her spirit untouched. He did not know if she would survive, did not know if hunters waited for her beyond the hills, but she had a chance, and that chance mattered. A soft breeze passed through the yard. Rowan closed his eyes and felt it move through him, carrying away the weight of years spent running from himself. When he opened them, his hand rested on his chest, where Tala's hand had pressed the night before. "At least I am no coward anymore," he whispered. Dumped above him, birds crossed the sky, their wings cutting through the morning air. Rowan watched until they disappeared, then turned his back on the ranch. He put on his worn hat, slung an old saddle strap over his shoulder, and started walking. He had no money, no horse, no plan, but for the first time in his life, Rowan Pierce was walking toward something instead of away from it. Somewhere beyond the mountains, Warrior rode free beneath an open sky. And because of one choice made in the dark, 2 lives had broken free from their cages. Sometimes that is enough.